Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Rick Wallace. It's still, as my great grandparents used to say, growing when I was growing up, it's 4 day. Meaning before daylight, but this is 4 day in the morning. Here in the office where I normally am at this time. Normally, this is the time of getting everything together and about to do my morning motivation, inspiration, advisory video for the Visionetics Institute. But there was something on my mind yesterday. The wife and I had to go out of town. My youngest daughter had a birthday. That's a whole nother story. But we were out of town, so I didn't get a lot done when I got back in late yesterday afternoon. And I wanted to do this as a live stream, but I couldn't. But the first thing I wanted to do this morning is get up. I didn't think doing a live at this early in the morning was going to be something that would actually be productive. So I decided to just go ahead and record it. I'm going to upload it and people will get to it when they get to it. But it is definitely something that needs attention. Before I get to this whole Leaving Neverland Michael Jackson documentary and how it differs from what's happened with Bill Cosby and R. Kelly, I want to remind you that the work that we're doing at the Odyssey Project is extremely important. There are a number of organizations outside of the Odyssey Project that have boots on the ground that are a part of the solution that get very little attention, that get very little support, and yet still find some way to keep pushing on. One of the things that we fail in miserably is being on code in supporting, underwriting, and helping to fund programs that are going to be vital to the empowerment of our people. If you follow me for any time, you know a few things about me. I am a researcher. I am a behavioral uh, specialist. What I do is I study behavior of people in from an individual perspective as well as in social groups to understand how certain things happen, why they happen, and how, if necessary, do we change those things from happening. I have put in over 90,000 hours of research into understanding the plight of Blacks in this racial caste system, in everything from multi-generational transmission of trauma, miseducation of our youth, mass incarceration, gentrification, and on down the line. And the need for us to be able to get past these blockages that are being moved from generation to generation, the lack of generational wealth and how that's playing a part in our impotence in the ability to control our own destiny and the need to seek approval, approbation, and support outside of ourselves. And one of the things that has been a passion of mine, we do so much work. We deal with youth as a whole. We have programs that deal with domestic violence, men and women. We have programs that deal with childhood sexual abuse, male and female. We understand that females are definitely disproportionately affected in that area, and we work that way. My wife, as a matter of fact, who is a survivor both of childhood sexual abuse and rape, we work together. Matter of fact, later today, she's going to be going out with some of the girls she worked with to take them out, and they're going to go have a fun day. And this is something that happens on a regular basis. She visits them inside of the juvenile detention centers here in Texas, at the Texas Youth Commission. And so we're doing work in that area. One of the things I'm most proud of is confronting African American adolescent and young adult male violence and the high dropout rate of among young Black males, which means a higher risk of going to prison and becoming a part of mass incarceration in the private prison industrial complex. And this rite of passage program that is known as the Black Men Lead works with Black males from the age of 4 all the way to 30. And we're doing some unbelievable things. Several weeks ago, we hit a deadline where we were trying to raise 25,000. At the time, I think we had less than 1,000. Right now, we have a little over 2,000. We're 3 weeks behind that goal. The work has been done. The work is consistently being done. we have so many areas in which we have these big gashing wounds that aren't being dealt with, from finance to relational issues to dysfunction, mental illness, depression, so many other areas that we're not dealing with and we're not investing in it. We as a collective must grow in an area, in all areas over time. And one of the best ways to do that is to invest in our youth. Invest in our youth and then insulate them from the forces that will move against them and attack what we've planted. And we haven't done a good job of that. We haven't done a good job of providing our kids with an identity. We haven't done a good job with completely and holistically educating our youth. And I talk about that in the Miseducation of Black Youth in America, which is my 16th book. I also talk about all of these problems in Born in Captivity, Psychopathology as a Legacy of Slavery, which was my 19th book. I talk about this in depth. We need your support. It's that simple. We need your support. Over the last 16 years, I've pretty much funded all of this through the work I do in my other businesses. And it has become a load. And I've made a promise not only to my wife, but to my business partners who have been behind me from day one, or at least close to it, and told them that I'm not going to allow my pride to get in the way of me consistently pushing the narrative of needing financial support. I've been in the past. Let's just say this. In over 16 years, we've got roughly to date around 7,000, 7,500, somewhere up in there. I could be off a little bit, $7,000 in external support coming from donations. Much of that has happened in this last push. Not much of it. Well, much of it, not the majority, but much. Something like I told you, like we're right around 2,000, and we're supposed to be at 25,000 3 weeks ago. But that's the best we've ever done, period. And what I would normally do is I get frustrated, and then I just say, you know what, forget it. I'll figure it out. And that has put me and my family in a situation where we could be a lot further along in what I'm doing for them to make sure they're okay when I leave this place. That they're okay now. Me and my wife have 13 kids, and 8 of them are of adult age, but parenting doesn't stop there. That's one of the problems we have. And I talk about this problem in the Black community is 18, you're out on your own. Nobody else is doing that. Nobody else is dumping their kids out at 18. Trust me, if you go back and you think at the age of 18, what were you really mentally prepared for? What were you in a level of emotional maturity prepared for? And what were you financially prepared for at 18? Which means you're going to go out and accrue debt, you're going to struggle, and it's going to be hard to get your footing. I believe that you provide the footing for your kids. If they're trying and they're putting in the effort and they have an idea of where they're going, it's a part of your responsibility to make sure they get there. And so that's that. But anyway, I've made a commitment to the people who are behind me to be consistent in this push for fundraising. Uh, and there's so much going on that we can't even tap it. The Black Men Lead Rite of Passage, Music is Life program, Black Community Empowerment program, dealing with people who are struggling in all kinds of ways. There's so many different ways that these people are in need, and we're doing the best we can. Like I said, domestic violence, childhood sexual abuse, molestation, rape, and all this other stuff. So we need your support. Anytime I put a video up on this channel on YouTube, the first paragraph in the description box is going to be how you can give to the Odyssey Project, the Black Man Lead Program, etc. So we're asking for your support. Now, let's move into this Michael Jackson thing. There's been, over the last few years, we saw with Bill Cosby. We're seeing what's happening with R. Kelly, and there are two sides of the coin, or two sides of the line that people are, standing on. Some are defending R. Kelly, defending Bill. Some are, throwing them to the wolves or throwing them under the bus, whatever you want to call it. Uh, I'm a firm believer, and I've said this before. my first concern is always to protect our women and our children. Um, Bill is different for the most part. I think Bill's uh, counterparts are uh, a lot is going on there. So I'm trying to put my wording into a place where I can be true to myself and how I feel about it. Uh, the women that Bill supposedly did this to without their knowledge at all, and I think it's a give and take thing on that. Were predominantly white. Uh, while I have no love at all for any rapist, no matter who their victim is, just period, I think that's like one of the lowest things that you can be. Obviously, my focus is going to be on black women and black children, and also men get raped too. But in this instance, we're talking about black women and black children specifically, or women and children, period. Black women and children, period. The violation of children is unacceptable. Violation of black children should be punishable by death. That's my belief. So I have no love for R. Kelly in the sense of what he's done, but I do pay attention to patterns. And I've been talking about this pattern thing for a while. You have to ask yourself when something goes mainstream and it becomes a part of a process and movement, and you can see the patterns where it's happening over and over again. The first question that we have to learn to ask ourselves is not how we feel about the person that it's happening to. Because some of us are going to be, hey, I grew up with, Bill Cosby. I grew up with the watching Fat Albert as a kid and as a teenager watching the Cosby Show and then A Different World. I've got this emotional connection to Bill Cosby. Or man, I made several kids on R. Kelly music. You got to remove yourself from the emotional side of things and you've got to start asking yourself, who does this benefit? Is it really benefiting the Black community? And what's going on, or is there an underlying agenda that's probably going to be harmful over the long haul for the Black community? And where should I stand in this? How should I behave? I am not one, again, I want to be clear in this. I have no love or support for someone who's violating kids. I do have my own idea of how we handle our own. I believe that that's important that we deal with our own. I think that, matter of factly, if we would be dealing with our own, we wouldn't be having this conversation. See, whatever R. Kelly didn't just pop up when Surviving R. Kelly hit the airwaves. That's old news for the people who have been paying attention. That's old news that this guy has a problem in the area of ephebophilia, which is mid to late adolescent females. He has a problem in that area. No matter how much it's being exaggerated or not, there's a problem. That's too much consistent flow in complaints. I think that you got some money grabbers out there. I think you got some opportunities out there, and I think they're jumping on the train, but there's still an underlying issue. And the problem is, from what I heard too, is that the feds are going after people who were involved in him that can been uh, what we would call an enabler in the criminal element or the criminal or the judicial system are co-conspirators. If you in some kind of way knew this guy was doing it and you made it possible, you're guilty of a conspiracy of sex crime against a minor. And so I have no problem with everybody being held accountable. Now, my thing is, again, if we would have held him and Uncle Johnny and Mama's boyfriend and all these other people that are violating our babies on a daily basis, if we would hold them accountable and not give them a pass or protect them, then we probably would be in a better position. Now, this should have been dealt with as far as R. Kelly was concerned long before it became an international incident. But however, this is where we at. The reason I'm here now is that this whole Michael Jackson thing is different. Michael was weird. What some people would refer to as eccentric. He wasn't an average person, and that was a lot of reasons for that. When you study the history of his life, um, he was emotionally immature. and there's a reason for that. He was overly trusting, but he was very concerned. I did a lot of research over the years, and when this resurfaced, I wanted to go, okay, maybe I missed something. So I went back and I started reading and doing some research. There's a 300-page FBI report that clears Michael Jackson of any wrongdoing. There is the allegations are really coming from this guy, Wade Robson. You probably remember Wade from So You Think You Can Dance and some other dance shows, and he's a choreographer for most part that idolized Mike and was one of the people who testified at Mike's trial that nothing ever got sexual during those sleepovers. And more people have come out that weren't a part of the accusers during that trial and said that it was never sexual. From Macaulay Culkin to I think it was Webster, the guy who played Webster, Emmanuel Lewis, and so a bunch of other people. And people were interviewed, his family, people were interviewed, the FBI, anybody that understands what the FBI, the one thing they are is thorough. And there's a 300-page report of by the FBI that I mean everything but exonerates. Exonerates they can't do. They can't rule him not guilty. But they basically said we could find no evidence of anything of anything illegal, not just in the sense of what's being said about messing with children. Now the thing is, when you go back and you look at what Wade is saying, when he first when Michael Jackson first died, this was several years after the trial. One of the things that Wade came on and did gave a statement saying Michael Jackson changed the world and more personally my life forever. He is the reason I dance, the reason I make music, the one of the main reasons I believe in the pure goodness of humankind. He has been a close friend of mine for 20 years. His music, his movement, his personal words of inspiration and encouragement, and his unconditional love will live inside of me forever. I will miss him immeasurably, but I know that he is now at peace and enchanting the heavens with a melody and a moon. This was right after Mike. And then there were other things that happened. So you got to say, okay, what changed between Wade Robson and this other guy? I forget his name, but the other co-accuser. But what changed with Wade? Well, Wade's career fell apart. Wade was one thing he was driven, and the thing is that caused a lot of emotional stress based on his own words, and he began to fall apart, and his career began to decline, and he was no longer able to make money the way he was making it at first. So when they got ready to do what was it, the Cirque du Soleil uh, production surrounding Michael Jackson, he wanted to choreograph it. He went to the estate and talked to the people who were making decisions, but they chose someone else. He also, at the same year, his marriage fell apart, his finances went in peril. I'm just looking at some of the notes I was able to find on a few articles. You'll be able to read the entire article. The link is going to be in the description box. You can go read the entire article. But basically, he filed a $1.5 billion lawsuit against the estate, him and James Safechuck, that's the guy's name, of Michael Jackson, and totally reversed his story. But it was after hitting all of these terrible things, and in his life, and that's that. Now I want to get to the whole Oprah Winfrey and Gayle King, and that's what I want to talk about. This guy is on a money grab. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out. Why is mainstream media pushing the narrative when there's so much evidence out there that it's not true? Well, number one, it's money. The one thing that you can understand and believe, and if you watch it over the years, it's always happened. The persecution of a black man garners the attention of white people. Whether the persecution is righteous or not righteous or unrighteous, seeing a black man brought down is as close to lynching as a lot of people are going to get. And so it produces these unbelievable uh, ratings, opportunities, and Oprah. excuse me, and Gayle King have jumped on the bandwagon. And the reason I have such a problem with Oprah and Gayle, well, they've been pandering to a white audience for a long time. This is nothing new. Oprah built her wealth through uh, a pathway made by white associates. Um, one of which has been a primary, well, two of which have been primary images in this Me Too movement for their misconduct when it comes to women. And the thing is, Hollywood is like any other subset in this world. People in it know what's going on. Just like there's gossip between teachers at a school, just like there's gossip in the workplace, just like there's gossip in any other place, there's these constant narratives and conversations going on about what this person is doing, what that person is, just like Bill Cosby and what he's been doing for years. Everybody knew. Everybody that is old enough to go back to the 70s can tell you that's been Bill's MO. This is nothing new. We just didn't care about it then. And so you got all these people that have been doing this. You got Matt Liner got a darn gone S&M chamber set up in his office. You mean to tell me nobody knew about that? Okay, my thing is this. This is where it differs. Where it differs between where Michael Jackson differs between the other two. Absolutely no evidence. No evidence that he did it. He was found innocent in a court of law. The problem with the human psyche around the world, and especially in America, is that we've been conditioned that if we hear it on the media, it's been verified, validated, and confirmed. And that means it's true. The media is where we have been conditioned that we get all of our truth and information from. We never consider the fact that this is a propaganda mechanism and is designed to write narratives based on social engineering, social constructs, and social control. The way that the powers that be control the masses is through controlling what they think, and the way they control what they think is by the images and the information they provide through these channels. It is not always through news media. It's through television programming. It's through movie scripts. It's through so many different mechanisms. The way the news is reported, the way you refer to uh, a mass murderer as a teen and a kid the same age who kicks a cop as a thug. It's in defining the entire narrative, defining what we're seeing while we see it, so that we draw a conclusion with subconsciously without ever even understanding why. We view ourselves in a light that was created by mass media. That's why you have such a large problem with inferiority complexes. That's why you have such a large problem with self-hatred, is because they are writing the narrative constantly, not just in the mechanisms and that I mentioned, but in components I mentioned, but also in the educational system. Black kids are constantly being fed information and bombarded with information that suggests they're inferior to whites. We're always talking about the IQ test. We're always talking about performance. We're not talking about the components and the mechanisms in place that create that reality and how they play into it. We're not talking about that because it doesn't benefit those who run the system. You have to understand that. So when we look at Michael Jackson, we look at Oprah, who has always been, you know, and see, the thing is, Oprah has status in the Black community because Oprah has paper. If Oprah was the average person, nobody would pay attention to her. She'll be being called that word that we love to call Black women when we don't like them. One that I don't like to use, but that's what she would be being called if she didn't represent this level of success. There's this thing that we have that we're going to have to get past so that we can see things clearly, and that is we have this thing with celebrities and people who have uh, uh, achieved based on the social definition success. And we live our lives vicariously through them. So we have come to the ideal conclusion that we will never ever live that level of success. So we live vicariously through them. That's one of the reasons why we have defended R. Kelly. And I'm saying we as a collective, we know all of us haven't, but we've defended R. Kelly and Bill Cosby with such great intensity is because we've lived vicariously through them. We've seen them, living this life that we believe is untouchable. It's a life that when I look at it, and I've had my time where I was chasing it and living a life that the average person probably wouldn't. That I was living at it, and luckily I was disrupted. Not on. I didn't make the initial decision. The decision was made for me. I simply had to rethink in the rebuilding of where I was going, what was important to me, and things stopped being important to me. I want people in my life who've never experienced what I've experienced to experience it to a certain extent, because that's some liberation, that's some feeling that you want to experience with that. But that shouldn't be your focus. But that's what we're on. We're on. That's what's up. The life that R. Kelly was living. The VIPs, the Bentleys and the roses and the mansion on the hill and all this other stuff. And he's not the only one. It's all these other people, and we live vicariously through them because we can't see in ourselves the potential to create anything we want. Now, there's nothing wrong with having things. The thing is, are you making an impact in the world? Are you going to be someone who has wrote your legacy? Because what I can tell you, just having money is not going to be enough to write a legacy that will speak for you after you are gone. That's not going to be enough. Having things that are going to be transferred to someone else after you die is not going to be enough. What you need is to have put your imprint on the world, have made a difference. And see, that's what Michael Jackson has done. He's an icon because he put his print on things. And there are some people, even D.L. Hughley. I agree with a lot of what D.L. Hughley says, but I don't agree with what he says that Michael got a pass because of his talent. R. Kelly definitely got a pass because of his talent. I can't tell you how many times I've heard he's a musical genius, as if that relinquishes him for the accountability of be doing right by our children and our women and kids regardless. No, it does not. We can't deny his genius. And I don't suggest that we do. I suggest that we hold people accountable despite of or in spite of whatever it is that they bring to the table. You can bring nothing to the table that can justify the mistreatment of our women and children, or you can bring nothing to the table that can justify the mishandling of our men in any type of way that is going to prove detrimental. We must hold all of our people accountable for being pro Black and pro social in the Black experience across the board. That's a requirement that we have to demand. But the problem is, we're so divided, we're so sunken that we can't see the need. We don't teach the need. It's not being inculcated into the minds of our babies so that we have an understanding of who we are. That's the difference between us and the other groups that we see thriving, is that there's this early developmental stage where kids are just soaking up information when they're in the state of theta, mentally and emotionally, and they're just soaking up things and they're developing an understanding of how they're going to approach the world, the role they play in the world, or how the world will respond to them. And they're being taught who they are. They're being taught what is pro-social behavior, what is anti-social behavior, what is expected of them. You see it in bat mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs through a rite of passage program with Jews. You see it in quinceañeras and Sweet 16s and other groups like Latino groups and other groups. You see these rites of passages because they've been told this is who you are, this is what you're going to develop into. When you develop into this is what's going to be expected. And that's one of the things that we do in the proper socialization and appropriate socialization of Black males, is the development of an understanding of what's going to be expected of you, what's going to be demanded of you, how you're going to have to carry yourself, what you can do and what you can't do, what is absolutely unacceptable, and it's being taught. And that's what we really have to focus on, is that we are being bombarded with an idea of inferiority, bombarded with an idea that we're subpar, and we consistently behave based on this consistent narrative. because we receive it. The thing is, I've told a couple of brothers that I've seen always barking at women about knowing their worth and telling them, don't do this, you don't have to take this, you don't have to accept this, you don't have to take this from a man, you don't have to take that from a man. I said, you're going about it the wrong way. See, this is what I know from my experience of working with people and helping people over the years in this area. When you truly teach a person and reveal, I like the word reveal, but when you reveal to a person what they're really worth, you no longer have to tell them what they should be accepting and what they shouldn't. A person who knows their value will only accept that which is equal or greater than their value. You don't have to tell them don't take that. When they really know who they are, they won't take it. Their understanding of who they are will demand that they have a certain level of engagement, and the way they're treated is on par with who they see themselves as. You don't have to tell a person what to do. You just have to show them who they are. And that's what we're failing at. We're letting someone else define us. We're letting someone else tell us. And they're telling us in so many different ways that we don't understand. I've been talking about patterns for I don't know how long recently, just really heavily about patterns, because they're there. The patterns in how they're addressing our icons, the pattern in how they are defining our boys, the pattern in how they are presenting our women, and all of these patterns. And what we see is there's a movement, and there's a movement that has them nervous. You got to pay attention to everything. The movement that has them nervous is that we're starting to accept ourselves. We're starting to love ourselves. Over the last 15 years, there's been this movement of a lot of our beautiful sisters going natural. And I absolutely love it. I love when what I'm seeing, and it's not condemning anybody else. It's just saying I love that we're taking time to love ourselves and accept ourselves. We're seeing more black dolls that reflect us. There's so many other things that we're starting to see, but the prevalence of what we're seeing is negative, and we've got to guard our children against that. Michael Jackson is being attacked, number one, because he's an icon. Number two, they're going after money in his estate, but mainstream media is using him as a distraction to get to paint the black man as a pedophile. You get to paint him as dysfunctional, disruptive, and you get to push this narrative that's been consistent that black men are animalistic inherently, and that they have to be monitored. We have to be policed. We have to be monitored, and not looking at the construct that created certain behaviors and where it came from. We look at situations. I am not one, and I'm going to say this again, I am not one that does the comparison. I am not one that believes because white men are getting away with rape and molestation. And I've seen another situation where a white boy molested like a year-old black baby and is getting no jail time. The natural thing when you're aspiring to be accepted in a system or be a part of a system is you want to be treated the same as the people who the system was designed for. And so you got a lot of people saying, well, they're not going after them. My whole thing is they're not going after them for a reason. We should pay attention to that because their behavior is showing you how the game is played. That doesn't mean we don't hold ours accountable. Now, I'm not one for throwing our people to the wolves for them to deal with, but we don't sit up and say, well, they're doing it over there. You go ahead and do it. You shouldn't be getting in trouble. They're not getting in trouble. No, we've got to understand that first of all, this isn't the system that we've created. It's the system they've created. It's their system, and they're going to make sure they're okay. And at a time in which they are really concerned about the movement of not just black people, but Asians and Latinos that are making moves. The Asian community has the highest earning median in the US. They're out earning whites now. Okay, not only that, they are closing the wealth gap. They're almost at $100,000 per household median, moving into the roughly 130, 140,000 that whites have in the household median. So that's huge. Now, what we have to look at is in order for us to ascend, There has to be a code of conduct, a code of behavior, certain protocols, certain agendas. There are certain things we simply can't do to one another if we're going to become empowered. There are certain things that we cannot do individually because it's good for us when it's bad for the whole. That's a big problem. We are highly individualized. So we see everything through our eyes, how I feel about it. And that's one of the things that I've had to really train myself to remove myself from the equation and see how behavior impacts the whole. I don't get to, as the leader in my home, as the protector in my home, as the end all be all, no matter what happens and who does what in my home. At the end of the day, if something falls and goes awry, people are going to look at me. But I can't live my life on an individual level if I'm going to have that role. I am not a dominant force in my house. I am the end all. My wife does what she wants, how she wants, but I expect her to operate in a way that's conducive for the whole family growing and our relationship to grow, or I wouldn't have married her. I'm not going to marry someone I got to make do anything. So I don't go around making anybody do anything. I trust it. But as a man, I lead by example and I operate in a way that provides an environment for those in the household and my children that are outside the household to function within the scope of what we're trying to do. And that comes from me sitting up and understanding. So as a leader, I don't get to sit up and think individually. And as any person, if you're going to have an impact and be a part of a social group, your responsibility is to understand how to benefit the group, not just yourself. And that's something that we've got to look out for. But there's so much evidence, and I encourage you to follow the link that's going to be in this video and read the article. But we have to look at this is, and my whole thing is there's so many reasons why I have a problem with Oprah and Gail, which is, I'm not going to get into them, but I have a problem with both of them. No problem going after Mike, no problem uh, holding Kales to the fire. Uh, but you got all these pictures, and I don't care when they were taken. That's another thing people are saying. Well, the pictures that you see them kissing and hugging and loving on Harvey Weinstein was before all this broke. See, that again goes to speak to allowing the media narrative, the mainstream media narrative, to control how you inspect things. I didn't jump off on a emotional tangent and just go off on Oprah. I knew I had done research. So I was able to speak on it initially to a certain level. And then I said, okay, I could maybe have missed something or didn't catch it when it came through. So let me go back and look. So I again used my ability to learn for myself what was going on, not just let the media tell me. And this is the problem I have. You may have taken those pictures with Harvey Weinstein before everything broke. But the thing is, you knew who he was before everything broke. Everybody in Hollywood knew who he was. And the thing is, since you were so close to him and now it's all out there, you should, if you really truly care about women, if you really truly care about how women have been mishandled and mistreated, and this is what it's really about, and then you should be really, really upset with him because you trusted him and you had him in your friend circle. You know who he was. That's why you ain't going after him. My thing is the legal system has their clamps on him to a certain extent. I don't know where it's going to go, but they've indicted. He's gotten 3 more indictments over the last couple of days. That's one thing. But you're not going after him with the ferocity that you're going after Michael Jackson and to a lesser extent R. Kelly. My concern here is Mike because Mike has been proven innocent, and the whole thing is why no everybody's saying they're not going after none of these other guys is that they haven't been proven guilty in a court of law. Well, Michael was proven innocent in a court of law, and R. Kelly has not been proven guilty in a court of law. He's been tried in the media and found guilty, and to some that's enough. But if you're going to use a different standard, then we need to understand what your motives are. I'm not telling you you got to use the same standard. I just want to make sure that my people understand you're using 2 different standards. See, I don't want to beg anybody that's got a white agenda, regardless of the color of their skin. I'm not going to beg them to behave because their character and who they are and how they see themselves, how they see the world around them is dictating their behavior. I'm not going to beg you to behave. You see, you have to have a natural love for my people. There has to be a natural developed love for my people, an affinity with my people to be pro black. You can't talk a person into being pro black. That's something that you have or you don't have. And she doesn't have it. It's never been there. It has never been there. She has never, ever, ever had that. It's always been about her and her quest, and that's what she's worked on. So my thing is we need to really slow down and pay attention to what's happening. And we need to be willing to look deeper and underneath the surface to find the truth. And we need to be willing to hold our people accountable. But also we got to be careful that we don't buy into narratives that aren't true. You know, um, in this whole now we gonna mute Michael Jackson. And another part that really bothers me is after Michael was acquitted, I think it was 2000 and what, nine? No, it was before that, 2005 maybe. He was acquitted. He died in 2009. So 4 years he lived after that, and you could have called him. You're in pictures with dude. You were good with him until it became advantageous for you to attack him, showing that you have no loyalty, you have no sense of moral turpitude. You are just going to go after the dollar. You present yourself as being superiorly moral. You present yourself as being above all the so-called low line behavior, but at the end of the day you're chasing a dollar and your relevance in the world is dwindling. Yes, you have the money, but outside of that, where are you relevant? OWN isn't doing what it used to do, and other than OWN and your money, what it used to be the talk of the town. You were running daytime television, you were dominating, you were there, and so the relevance isn't there, and obviously that's important to her. My whole thing is this: it's important for us to pay attention to the patterns. It's important for us to understand what's happening and what's going on and how it impacts us. That's a question we should be asking every time something is put in front of us. What does that mean to me? How does it impact Black people? Is it good for Black people? Is it bad for Black people? Not what they're telling me it is, but me taking a moment to have to exercise critical thought, to do a little research, to gain a better understanding, to know what's really going on, not just what's being presented. And again, this is not about giving anybody a pass. I'm going to say this over and over again. Anybody who harms Black women and children or Black elderly. Black men, I feel the same way about us, but we can defend ourselves against most things mano a mano. One man, another man, you know, no weapons, no help, we're going to be okay. Our women, not necessarily so. Our children, definitely not. So our elderly, not so. So it's our responsibility as men to step out in front and say, not on my watch. But when I see a Black man being drugged through the mud after clearing his name, after having, and that's another thing, I've read probably 15 different interviews from people who were interviewed about Michael Jackson and his character with children, his character, period. Everything pretty much comes the same. The one thing is he's very caring, he's too trusting, he loves kids, he's paid for I don't know how many operations, he's granted wishes of terminally ill children, so much, and not one person outside of those people who were proven to be liars in court, and this cat Wade, who showed up and totally changed his story of worshiping Michael Jackson and saying he's the best man ever, to now wanting a piece of Michael's estate because of his own decline in his career and his life and everything else. And so I've got a problem with how he's being handled. And the thing is, it would be different if there was evidence. There's no evidence outside of what this dude is saying. But when you look at it, we've gotten to the point now where if you see a documentary, it must be true. No, it doesn't have to be true. That being said, look, I could go on and on about this, but I'm gonna get out of here. As I said in the beginning, the work that we're doing at the Odyssey Project is vital. We're doing it in so many areas. It's kind of overwhelming, but it's necessary. We have the Black Men Lead Rite of Passage Initiative, which is birthed out of the research that revealed that one of the primary contributors to African American and adolescent male violence is not being properly racially socialized. We don't have any consistent method of socializing our men. We have 1.5 million men missing in the Black community. So the presence of a proper male role model where you see manhood being modeled, which is the number one way that young males learn, it's absent. The sense of identity that one gets from their father is lacking in far too many homes. And what you get is a behavior of a child coming into this new physical, mental, and chemical state in which they're now stronger than their female counterparts. They now have a natural aggression from the rise in testosterone that they don't understand, and they redirect that towards one another and towards women. And they don't understand that because they haven't been trained that at an early age that at a certain point their bodies are going to change, and as their bodies change, their bodies are preparing them for their role as men. They're not being trained that this aggression that they're getting is not to be aimed at one another or aimed at women, but aimed at anyone who would violate the community, violate women, or violate the children. Their roles are as protectors before providers. They have to be willing to sit up and put themselves between any harm and those in the community that are more vulnerable than themselves. And we teach that. We teach so much more. We deal with, like I said, domestic violence. We deal with childhood sexual abuse. We deal with the understanding and the need of the building of generational wealth. We're working on these problems, and we have been doing this for a while. My wife is involved, who is also, like I said earlier, a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. She was molested at 5, and she was raped as a teenager. And the love I have for her is just unbelievable, and the strength that she exhibits. Like I said, she's going out with kids today. She's going to take these little girls who have been traumatized and was once a part of the system but been released, and they still keep up with these kids. They've been released, and now they're going to take them out and let them have fun, let them be girls, because these girls are forced to grow up so fast in the world and environment they're living in. And she takes them out and lets them be kids again, and that is so huge. So it's so much love going on, and we want to continue what we're doing. We really want to increase the intensity, the rate, and the scale of what we're doing, and we need your help. Again, the first paragraph in every video is going to be the way that you can reach us. So with that being said, I'm gonna get off it. We need your support. We're asking for it right now. With that being said, I'm gonna get off it. You guys have a great day. I still have a lot to do.